Welcome to Daily Podcast.
Easy English conversations, Englishpodcast.
Picture this. It is late at night. You are completely exhausted.
Oh, the worst kind of tired.
Right. Like that bone tired where your brain just feels like static and all you really want to do is melt into the couch and endlessly doom scroll on your phone.
Yeah, the gravitational pull of the couch is just, it's immense at that point.
It is. The thought of doing absolutely anything else feels almost physically painful. But instead of falling down that infinite social media rabbit hole, you actually make a different choice. You close the app, you put the phone down, and you do 10 minutes of something productive.
Which sounds almost like a superhuman feat, right?
Yes.
Defying that pull when your energy is at absolute zero.
It really does. But, if you're wondering how to actually make that happen in your own life without feeling completely miserable, we have a bizarrely brilliant playbook for you today.
We do, and it comes from such an unexpected place, too.
Yeah, so we are looking at this fascinating piece of source material. On the surface, it's literally just a transcript from an English conversation program.
Right, like designed to help language learners practice daily vocabulary.
Exactly. But tucked inside this seemingly innocent lesson is honestly an absolute masterclass on human psychology and habit building.
It's wild how these profound insights can just surface in unexpected places. The source manages to break down this highly complex human behavior into a really accessible framework.
So the mission of our deep dive today is to extract what the source calls the absolute gold of daily life. We are unpacking the ultimate tool for turning your abstract dreams into concrete reality.
And spoiler alert, it's not money. And it's not some, mystical lightning bolt surge of inspiration.
No, definitely not. It is self-discipline. Okay, let's unpack this because we are not going to give you a lecture today about being tough on yourself or adopting some grueling 24/7 grind set.
No, please, we have enough of that out there.
Right. This source actually offers a completely new, surprisingly gentle way to look at getting things done.
And that element of gentleness is, well, it's the entire linchpin of the theory. If we're going to understand how to actually construct lasting self-discipline, we first have to dismantle a very prevalent cultural misconception.
Which is?
We have to stop confusing self-discipline with its much flashier but wildly unreliable cousin, which is motivation.
Oh, man. Let's focus on motivation for a second, because I feel like it gets all the good PR in our culture.
It really does. We're constantly told you just need to get motivated.
Yeah, but let me run this by you. Is motivation basically just a New Year's resolution sugar crash?
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Because you know the feeling I'm talking about. You get that first week of January high, you buy the expensive new running shoes, you color code a brand new planner, you feel totally invincible.
You can conquer the world.
Right. But then by week 3, that feeling just completely evaporates. And you're left staring at your running shoes wondering, what went wrong?
Well, that analogy actually maps perfectly onto the neurochemical reality of what is happening in your brain. Sugar crash is exactly right.
Really? Just a biological crash?
Yeah, the source makes this brilliant distinction here that we really need to internalize. Motivation is just a feeling. And like all feelings, happiness, sadness, anger, it is inherently volatile.
It comes and goes.
Exactly. Motivation is essentially a dopaminergic spike. It goes up and down based on 100 uncontrollable variables. Your mood, your blood sugar, your stress levels, or even just how many hours of sleep you got the night before.
Guess it's super fragile.
Very.
Yeah.
It's incredibly potent at the beginning, like you mentioned with the New Year's high, but biologically speaking, a dopamine spike is just not built to sustain you long term.
Okay, so when that feeling vanishes, our default reaction is usually to just panic. We think, well, the feeling is gone. I guess I'm just not motivated anymore, so I literally cannot do the thing.
And that is the exact trap the source warns us about. What's fascinating here is that when your motivation inevitably fades after 2 weeks, you aren't broken. You haven't failed.
You're just back to normal.
Right. You are just experiencing a very normal human baseline. The fading of motivation is not a signal from the universe to stop. It's the exact crucial moment when self-discipline needs to take over the steering wheel.
Because motivation is passive, but discipline is active.
Precisely. Motivation happens to you. Self-discipline is a choice you make. The text offers this incredibly clarifying definition. It says self-discipline is doing something that is beneficial for your future self, even when your present self is lazy, tired, or bored.
It's just keeping a promise to yourself.
Yes, you say, I will study for 10 minutes, and then you just execute it, regardless of the emotional weather currently happening in your head.
I really love that framing. The present self versus the future self. It clarifies the dynamics so well. But I have to push back here just a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
If discipline is so obviously undeniably good for our future selves, like if it brings us the language skills, the physical health, the financial stability that we genuinely want, why does it feel like fighting a war in the present moment?
It's a fair question.
Shouldn't our brains naturally want to help us achieve our goals? Like, why do we constantly self-sabotage for just a few minutes of short-term fun?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it brings us right to the biological tug-of-war happening inside our heads. Your brain is not trying to sabotage you out of malice or, weakness.
So it's not just me being a terrible person.
Not at all. It's simply following its incredibly old evolutionary programming. To understand this, you can think of your brain as a corporate boardroom.
Okay, a boardroom. Who is sitting at the table?
Well, on one side of the table, you have the limbic system. This is your evolutionary short-term sales team. For most of human history, grabbing an immediate, high-calorie reward literally meant survival.
So it only cares about today.
It only cares about right now.
Yeah.
It operates entirely on those dopaminergic reward loops. Then, on the other side of the table, you have the prefrontal cortex. This is your long-term R&D department.
Like planners.
Exactly. This is the part of your brain that cares about your future self, your long-term goals, and, abstract concepts like learning a language or saving for retirement.
So when I'm sitting on the couch, right, deciding whether to read a book or doom scroll, it's literally a conflict of interest between these two departments.
That's exactly it. When your present self is faced with that choice, checking your phone or eating a snack, it provides an immediate dopamine hit to the limbic system. It's cheap, fast energy.
Instant gratification.
Right. But self-discipline is entirely about the prefrontal cortex. Mastering a new skill or getting in shape takes a lot of time. It doesn't give your brain that instant payoff.
So the short-term team protests.
Very loudly. When you sit down to do the hard thing, your short-term sales team yells, wait. We are burning precious energy for a reward that might not arrive for months. Let's just watch a funny video instead. It's guaranteed instant profit.
Man, honestly, it's a miracle we ever get anything done if our own biology is constantly trying to conserve energy and chase that instant profit.
It is a massive challenge. But this is where the source introduces what I consider to be its most transformative concept. Because the usual advice out there is to just overpower the limbic system with brute force. Just be a drill sergeant.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But the source suggests a completely different metaphor. It says self-discipline is like being a gentle parent to your own brain.
A gentle parent. Okay, that completely flips the script for me. Because usually my internal monologue around discipline sounds like a furious military commander yelling at me for being lazy.
Right, the drill sergeant approach relies entirely on shame and adrenaline, which is exhausting, and ultimately it's just unsustainable. But gentle parenting acknowledges the brain's natural evolutionary desire for comfort without actually letting it run the show.
So how does that look in practice?
Well, the prefrontal cortex acts as the calm, steady parent, while the limbic system is the tired toddler. You literally say to your brain, I know you want to rest right now. I hear you. You've had a long day.
That's almost sweet.
But then you say, let's just do 10 minutes of this challenging thing first, and then we will absolutely rest. You validate the feeling. You don't judge it, but you still require a small effort.
I know you want comfort, but we have to do this tiny thing first. That is remarkably compassionate. And the big takeaway for you listening right now is this. Struggling with discipline does not mean you are fundamentally weak.
Not at all.
It doesn't mean you lack character. It just means your brain loves comfort like every other normal human brain on the planet.
Exactly. And once you remove the heavy moral judgment from it, the emotional stakes just drop. It becomes a management issue. You are simply managing an ancient neural system that prefers the sofa to the treadmill.
Okay, so gentle parenting the brain sounds lovely in theory, but how do I actually apply that when I'm, exhausted and staring at a blank screen? Because my instinct, when I finally decide to get my life together, is to set a massive life-changing goal.
Which is very common.
But the source lays out a very specific 4-step toolkit that argues against doing that. So let's talk through how to actually execute this without getting completely overwhelmed by our own ambition.
Yeah, the ambition is usually what trips us up first.
Right. So the source says step 1 is to start small, and it emphasizes starting absurdly small. Instead of declaring you're going to study for an hour, it says to do 5 or 10
It's
minutes.
just a tiny increment.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Come on. Does a tiny 5-minute effort actually move the needle for our future self? Am I really going to learn a new language or get fit in 5-minute increments? Or is this just like a psychological trick to get us off the sofa? Because 5 minutes feels like a rounding error.
It's absolutely a psychological trick, but it is a strictly necessary one based on how neurological friction works.
Neurological friction.
Yeah. The goal in the very beginning is not to run a marathon or become conversationally fluent in a week. The goal is simply to train what the source calls the self-discipline muscle.
Okay, I'm following.
When you set a massive goal like studying for an hour when you're already exhausted, the activation energy required to start is just huge. Your brain's resistance will be overwhelming. Your short-term sales team will veto it immediately.
Because an hour looks like a massive loss of energy for zero immediate reward.
Exactly. The friction is just too high. But when you shrink the goal down to 5 minutes, you drastically lower that activation energy. It becomes so small that you almost cannot say no to it.
Your brain evaluates the cost and thinks, well, 5 minutes. I won't die. I can survive that.
Exactly. And by doing this consistently, you are training your neural pathways to accept the transition from rest to effort. Over time, that muscle gets stronger and the 5 minutes naturally expands.
Make it so small your brain feels silly saying no. I love that. But that leads to a really practical problem. Let's say I shrink my goal to just reading 5 pages of a book. But if I try to do that while sitting on my couch with the TV on and my phone buzzing next to me, doesn't my environment just completely overpower my tiny amount of willpower?
It will, every single time. Which is why step 2 in the toolkit is about environmental design. The source warns us, never wait for the perfect place, perfect time, perfect mood.
Because that moment doesn't exist.
No. If you wait for the stars to align and for your motivation to organically return, literally nothing is ever going to happen. You have to manufacture the ease yourself.
Right. If the phone is within arm's reach, I don't care how disciplined you are, you're setting yourself up to fail.
Because you're forcing your brain to actively fight temptation while also trying to focus on a new task. That burns through your executive function rapidly. So you change the environment to make the desired behavior the path of least resistance.
So put the phone in another room.
Yes, create friction for the bad habit, or leave the book open on the kitchen table so you literally have to walk past it. You are manipulating your physical space so that doing the right thing is actually easier than doing the wrong thing.
Okay, so we've lowered the activation energy by making it tiny, and we've designed our environment to make it easy. But I still have to, remember to actually do it. How do I anchor this new behavior so I don't just forget about it 3 days from now?
That brings us to step 3, which the source describes as attaching your new habit to a routine. It uses the metaphor of glue. In neuroscience, this is often referred to as habit stacking, and it relies on something called Hebb's law.
Hebb's law. Unpack that for me.
So Hebb's law basically states that neurons that fire together wire together. You already have established routines in your day, things you do on absolute autopilot, like brushing your teeth, making your morning coffee, locking the front door.
Things I do without thinking.
Right. Your brain has incredibly thick. It requires zero motivation. So you use those existing rock-solid pathways as glue for the new, fragile behavior.
So I don't have to build a whole new routine from scratch. I just piggyback on one that already exists.
Yes. The example from the text is perfect. It says, after I brush my teeth at night, I will listen to an educational podcast for 5 minutes.
Oh, that's so simple.
You don't have to set an alarm to remind yourself to listen to the podcast. The physical act of brushing your teeth becomes the automatic trigger for the next action. You are wiring the new neurons to the old ones.
That makes a ton of sense. But I know myself and I know human nature. Even with the best environment and the best habit stacking, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to have a bad day and just not do it.
We all do.
And usually when that happens, my internal monologue is absolutely brutal. I tell myself, you're lazy, you're weak, you failed again. Why even bother?
This raises an important question. How do we talk to ourselves when we inevitably fall short? Because the 4th step in this toolkit is all about self-talk. And it is arguably the most critical step because it dictates whether you try again tomorrow or just quit entirely.
But why is that harsh internal monologue so damaging? Doesn't a little tough love keep us accountable?
It actually does the exact opposite biologically. When you use harsh, catastrophic language, calling yourself a failure or lazy, you induce shame. And shame triggers the amygdala, the fear center of your brain.
Okay, and what happens then?
When the amygdala is hijacked by shame, it quite literally inhibits the prefrontal cortex.
Wait, it shuts down the exact part of the brain we need for self-discipline?
Yes. Shame drains the cognitive energy you desperately need to evaluate what went wrong and try again. It makes you want to hide, not improve. Real, sustainable self-discipline requires shifting that internal monologue to be compassionate but honest.
So how do we do that?
You have to swap out the catastrophic language. Instead of saying, I am a terrible, lazy person, you say, I am learning a new skill, and today was hard. Instead of saying, I completely failed, you say, I missed today, but I will try again tomorrow.
It goes right back to that gentle parent metaphor. A good parent doesn't scream at a toddler and call them a failure for scraping their knee while learning to ride a bike.
Exactly.
They acknowledge that it hurts, they dust the kid off, and they gently encourage them to get back on the seat. You have to be willing to be that parent for yourself.
And that kind of self-compassion actually keeps the prefrontal cortex engaged. It keeps you in a state of problem solving rather than a state of panic.
Okay, we have a really solid toolkit here. We make the goal tiny to lower activation energy. We design our environment to remove friction. We glue it to an existing habit, and we use self-compassion when we stumble.
A great summary.
But let's take this out of the laboratory and put it into the messy, real world. Let's look at the traps. The source paints this incredibly relatable, everyday scenario. The 6:30 a.m. alarm rings.
Oh yeah, the ultimate daily battleground for the present self versus the future self.
Truly. So, version 1 of this scenario. The alarm goes off. You hit snooze 3 times. You finally grab your phone. You scroll in the dark for 30 minutes reading stressful news. And you eventually drag yourself out of bed feeling rushed, anxious, and already behind on the day.
We have all lived that morning.
Every one of us. But then there's version 2. The alarm goes off. You are just as sleepy. The bed is just as warm. The phone is sitting right there. But you make a different choice. You sit up, you drink a glass of water, and you read a book for just 5 minutes. Same bed, same tired person, 2 totally different trajectories for the day.
And that second choice, that tiny pivot towards the water and the book, is exactly what an act of respect for your future self looks like in real time. Notice it isn't about jumping out of bed at 4 a.m. to do a grueling 3-hour workout.
Right, it's so small.
It is just choosing the 5-minute positive action over the endless scroll. But making that choice is hard. And the source highlights 3 specific pitfalls that catch almost everyone.
Okay, let's go through them. Trap number 1 is the classic. Procrastination. The eternal chorus of, I'll do it later, I'll tackle that after lunch, I'll definitely start fresh tomorrow.
Procrastination is a fascinating mechanism. The text reminds us that when you delay a task, it doesn't mean you are a bad person. It usually means your brain is either intimidated by the size of the effort, or it lacks clarity on how to begin.
So how do we fix it?
The microfix the source offers for procrastination is to negotiate with your brain using the 2-minute rule. You literally tell yourself, I'm not going to do the whole intimidating task. I'm just going to open the document and type for 2 minutes. That's it.
Because usually the anticipation of the work is way worse than the work itself, right? Once you are 2 minutes in, you've crossed the threshold, the friction drops, and you just keep going.
Exactly. It completely bypasses the brain's alarm system. Now, the second trap is all or nothing thinking. This is the perfectionist downfall.
Oh, I know this one.
It's the belief that if you miss one single day of your new habit, the entire streak is ruined, so you might as well abandon the whole project.
I have always thought this behavior is so wild. It's like dropping your phone on the ground, seeing a tiny scratch on the screen case, and deciding, well, it's imperfect now, and just smashing the rest of it with a hammer. It makes absolutely zero logical sense.
I mean, that is a hilarious and completely accurate analogy. It is entirely irrational. The microfix for the perfectionist trap is to return to the core definition of self-discipline.
Which is?
Discipline is not an unbroken streak of flawless execution. It is simply the act of standing up one more time than you fell down. You missed Tuesday. Fine, Tuesday is over. You simply begin again on Wednesday. The repetition over a long timeline is what changes your brain, not a perfect streak.
And that brings us to the third trap, which I will admit I am personally very guilty of. Too many goals. You get that initial burst of New Year's motivation, and you decide that starting on Monday, you're going to wake up at 5 a.m., learn conversational French, go strictly vegan, and train for a triathlon all at the exact same time.
And by Wednesday afternoon, you are completely depleted, your executive function is fried, and you are back on the couch.
It's just too much.
The human brain simply cannot process that much sudden behavioral change. The cognitive load is too massive. The fix here is radical focus. You must pick just one small habit first. Just one. Let it that single tiny thing become an automatic, wired part of your routine.
And then wait until it's easy.
Exactly. Once it takes zero conscious effort to execute, then, and only then, can you add a second one. And the source also uses a really helpful piece of vocabulary when talking about navigating these daily traps. It talks about willpower, but it frames it as a small inner coach.
An inner coach. I like that distinction because if self-discipline is the outward action you take, willpower is the internal mental strength that drives it. It is that inner coach whispering in your ear, helping you say yes to the long-term R&D department and no to the short-term sales team. And just like a real muscle or a real coach, it gets stronger the more you rely on it. And it thrives on positive encouragement, not punishing criticism.
Couldn't have said it better.
So what does this all mean? We have covered a lot of psychological ground today, pulling some incredibly deep mechanisms out of a transcript meant for daily English practice. But the through line connecting all of this is just so clear.
It really is.
True self-discipline is not about turning yourself into a flawless, emotionless, hyper-productive machine. It is not about punishing your present self for being tired. It is simply a series of small, intentional, deeply compassionate acts of respect. It is a daily gift you choose to give to your future self.
That's a beautiful synthesis. It really is a paradigm shift. You are moving from seeing discipline as a restriction or a punishment to seeing it as a compounding investment in your own well-being.
So we have a challenge for you listening to this right now. Look at the landscape of your own life today. What is one small, incredibly tiny 5-minute habit you want to attach to your existing routine?
Just one.
Just one. Not tomorrow morning, not next Monday when the week starts fresh. Today, just 5 minutes. It is a tiny promise to yourself. But as we've explored, lowering that friction and keeping those tiny promises is the actual gold that turns abstract dreams into reality.
And if we connect all of this to the bigger picture, it leaves us with something profoundly interesting to ponder.
What's that?
If we practice being a gentle parent to our present selves every single day, if we consistently make these tiny 2-minute and 5-minute choices to prioritize our future well-being, despite the friction, does our present self eventually grow up?
Oh, wow. I love where you're going with this.
Right. If you train this self-discipline muscle long enough, with enough structural ease and self-compassion, does that exhausted internal battle between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system eventually quiet down? Does the friction fade, transforming discipline from something you have to actively, constantly do into simply who you naturally are?
That is a brilliant thought to leave on. Does the present self eventually grow up? I really love that. So the next time it's late, you're tired, and the warm glow of the phone screen is pulling you toward the couch. Remember that you have a choice. You can step in as the gentle parent. You can choose the open notebook or the glass of water or simply the early bedtime. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay kind to yourselves, give your future self a tiny gift today, and just keep going, one small step at a time.